Last week, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre lost 2 MPs from his caucus, one from resignation, the other from a floor crosser who joined the Liberals. Now, in his first public statements since then, he fed a bunch of slop to cameras in a way that I find to be incredibly interesting because, on one hand, he is a very talented politician in his ability to skew reality. On the other, I hope most people aren't falling for this. But in this video, I'm going to get to 3 very clear examples from his public appearance in how he misconstrues reality to shape a narrative for himself. Let me first start with something that I find super interesting, and that is just how loved Pierre Poilievre is within his own party compared to how hated he is by people who are not conservatives. So there's a great piece here in the Toronto Star from David Coletto. Pierre Poilievre's popularity is unprecedented, but his future as conservative leader, is his future as conservative leader safe? So the contrast is stark. His support is incredibly high among conservative voters. It is sky high. So 35% have a very positive impression, 42% are positive. It's a net score of plus 71, which is wild. Andrew Scheer's net score when he was leader, plus 28 in April 2020. Aaron O'Toole, who followed him, was plus 48. Neither of them anywhere close to where Pierre Poilievre currently is. And also worth mentioning the comparison to Stephen Harper. Also much higher than Harper. Plus 71 compared to plus 51 is where Harper was. Now, compare that to non-conservative voters. Only 3% of those who don't currently support the Conservatives feel very positively about Poilievre, while another 8% say they have generally positive view of him. 14% are neutral, 20% feel negative, and 52% say they have a very negative impression. A net score of minus 62. So minus 62 of those who are not conservatives versus plus 71 of those who are conservatives. I think this really comes down to whether or not you buy his bullshit. So let me get to the first clip from this appearance.
CBC was trying to comfort us just yesterday with a news story saying, hey, good news, you can get more affordable food if you go to this special shopping mart where they sell you food that's past the best before date. So now you can buy rotten food, and you'll be able to afford it. So that is the CBC's solution to liberal food price inflation.
Really? CBC's solution to liberal inflation of groceries is to buy rotten food. We're going to get to the actual CBC news segment that he is referring to there, but he's clearly trying to intimate that CBC doesn't care at all about the high cost of groceries because they're doing reports like this about how you should buy rotten food. Again, I will get to the actual segment. You can judge for yourself. But first, it's worth noting this is all part of his whole shtick around trying to defund the CBC when the vast majority of Canadians do not support that. So this was a poll done before the election. Do you think it would be a good or bad thing if CPC formed government and did the following? Defunding CBC is almost as unpopular as privatizing healthcare. So it's down near the bottom. This is not a popular position of Pierre Poilievre. But he continues to go after them despite the fact that CBC are one of the only places, if not the only, doing actual investigative reports about how corporations are screwing people. Because CBC is a public broadcaster, they do not have the allegiance to other corporations that, say, a CTV or a Global News does. So you are more likely to find investigative pieces about how corporations are screwing people over on CBC News, like they did with this investigation, where they uncovered that Loblaws was including the packaging and weighing of meat to to actually overcharge people in the purchasing of meat. And if we're up to Pierre Poilievre, we would not know about this because he would want to defund CBC to the point that they would not be able to do these sorts of investigations where they're uncovering how corporations screw people. But this idea that they don't care about, high cost of groceries or somehow protecting the Liberal Party and not reporting on this is so bizarre. Struggle meals and hamburger helper are trending because food is so expensive. This is from September. From this month, rising cost of living pushing more Atlantic Canadians into debt cycle, experts say. Food prices in Canada keep climbing, but these grocery items will give you sticker shock. CBC has done extensive reporting on the high cost of groceries. So to try and intimate that CBC is saying, oh, it's not a big deal, go buy rotten food, it's just like, it's so ridiculous on its face. But it's worth pointing out that this is the kind of stuff that Pierre Poilievre just spouts, randomly during these sorts of media appearances. And people, his supporters apparently eat it up because they love him. But this CBC article goes even further, going into, category by category, different food items and how they have gone over where inflation is. Ground coffee is ridiculous, 41% inflation. And part of that reasoning is not because of the liberal, whatever the liberals have done. It's global prices have hit record highs due to supply issues in major producing countries such as Brazil and Vietnam. At the same time, U.S. tariffs on goods from Brazil have upended the global coffee market, pushing prices upwards. So this is a global issue, not simply a Canadian problem. Also, when it comes to meat, the high cost of meat, in particular beef, this has to do with climate change. Those high prices are because persistent droughts are shrinking herds in Western Canada, and the cost for feed is higher. Yet, again, if it were up to Pierre Poilievre, they would be doing even less on climate. And I think it's very fair to argue, in fact, you should be arguing, the Liberal Party over the past 10 years have absolutely failed on climate, clearly have not done enough, because we are currently in a situation where these droughts are persistent. Now, again, climate change is not just a Canadian issue, it's a global issue. But to try and claim that, oh, the Liberals don't care about this, when you actually want to do even less on climate is absurd. Now, let's get to this segment from CBC. Does CBC want you to buy rotten food? Is this their solution to the high cost of groceries? Here is the full segment. Judge for yourself.
I'm at a type of grocery store that's gaining a lot of momentum. It sells discounted items, and people shopping here say they're saving a lot of money.
I spent 52 days, and if I would have bought it everywhere else, probably $150.
The food is sourced through distributors and manufacturers, so products that are mislabeled or can't be sold in regular grocery stores end up here, like this beef that was supposed to go to a restaurant. It's sold at a discount, making prices more affordable. Another reason for why prices are so cheap is because they sell items that are near or past their best before date.
Best before is almost more of a recommendation about marketing, whereas expiry for something like a meat product is, about the safety of consuming that food.
Experts say the stigma around low-cost stores like this one seems to be shifting.
Years ago, there was a bit of a negative stigma in being a bargain hunter, but nowadays, lots of people shop at these retail locations.
Just 5 years ago, people are looking, no, I'm not touching the box because it's expired. Now, because of the economy, people are, oh, you know what, it's 88 cents. I'm gonna try.
As for Liquidation Marie, business is booming. In 13 years, they have 8 locations and plan to expand to 10 locations within the next year.
As a company grows, there's usually added cost of distribution, transport, HR, you name it, and those costs tend to be passed on to consumers.
But while expansion comes with its own set of challenges, this type of store and the products they sell at a cheaper price are clearly in demand. Gabriel Guindy, CBC News, Longueuil.
All right, I'm not sure what you got from that segment, but to me that was not an advertisement and a defense of the Liberal Party and the cost of groceries, because it's okay, you can go buy rotten food at this grocery store. That's not what I got from this segment. What I got is that the economy is so terrible that people are relying on these sorts of stores to be able to afford anything or be able to afford more and pay less. So it's even said in that segment, because of the economy, they're seeing more customers. Like, they're not trying to hide that the economy is terrible, that people can't afford things. They're literally mentioning in the segment that people are showing up because the economy is getting worse. So again, the way Pierre Poilievre tries to take a segment like that and construe it to try and mean that, oh, the CBC is terrible because they're defending the high cost of groceries is so dishonest. Let me now get to the next incredibly dishonest clip. This is Pierre Poilievre talking about Liberal MP Nate Erskine-Smith and his recent comments about the Mark Carney budget, where he was critical of the budget, but not in the way that Pierre Poilievre is claiming.
This is Mr. Nate Erskine-Smith, a Liberal MP, that Mark Carney has broke his promise to spend less, with $90 billion of new spending, only 36% of which is actually capital. The rest is more costs. So when you have a Liberal MP attacking the costly credit card budget that Mr. Carney has put forward, then we see turmoil in the Liberals, and I know that there will be wall-to-wall coverage on CTV of this turmoil, of a Liberal MP criticizing his own budget days before the vote. I know you're camped outside his office right now, waiting to get comment from him. I know you've been chasing Mark Carney down hallways to find out what he has to say.
All right, so coming away from that comment there, you would think, oh, this Liberal MP Nate Erskine-Smith thinks Mark Carney is spending too much in the budget. He's really critical because he can't believe how liberal this budget is, how far left it is, wasting all this money, and he wishes it was more conservative. I'm going to get to the actual clip from Nate Erskine-Smith, what he actually said about the budget. But the other part of this criticism here is that, oh, the media should be freaking out because Nate Erskine-Smith, this Liberal MP, is criticizing the Liberal budget. What a huge deal. Massive story. Nate Erskine-Smith is well known to be somebody who speaks freely. The Liberal Party, unlike the Conservative Party, the Liberal Party actually allows Nate Erskine-Smith to give his opinions, which I don't think is a negative. In fact, what I think is a negative is the fact that Poilievre's office maintains tight control over what conservatives say and do. This quote from a Conservative Party member, everybody is being watched. What we say, what we do, who we talk to, we're told not to fraternize with MPs from other parties. That's not normal. To me, that's an issue. Having a member of your party be able to speak freely is a good thing. That isn't a scandal. That's a positive thing. And in fact, maybe part of the reason that you lost the Conservative MP to the Liberal Party is because he was not allowed to speak freely. And now he can if he chooses to. So this, Pierre Poilievre wasn't the only one freaking out about this. Melissa Lantsman, or I should say, trying to make a story out of this. Another Conservative MP here writing, in an alternative universe, the media will spend the next week focused on the growing cracks in the Liberal caucus as one of their own MPs openly speaks out against Mark Carney's budget. My only question after this video, does he vote for it? He actually kind of says in the video that he still supports it. He doesn't think there should be an election over this budget. But, clearly shouldn't watch it. Regardless, growing cracks. This is Nate Erskine-Smith while Trudeau was Prime Minister. 2 Liberal MPs break ranks, call for Israel arms embargo. Nate Erskine-Smith, again, has consistently spoken up when he did not agree with his own party. So this is not growing cracks. This is nothing new. This is very normal. And in fact, I wish it was normal in your party as well. But again, you run your party like authoritarians. So let me get to what Nate Erskine-Smith, part of what he actually says in this video. Does he think the budget is too liberal, too far left, spending too much? Or is that not exactly what he was saying?
But we are also cutting tree planting, moving away from an emissions cap, winding down greener homes, and the budget offers no new money for climate action. We do not need more public dollars chasing fossil fuels. Worse, we see major cuts of over $2.5 billion over 4 years to international development assistance. It does not live up to its promise of generational investments. I joked that it was a pretty good progressive conservative budget. I joked. I'll get flack for that. It's a joke. But hey, some conservatives agree.
So while Pierre Poilievre tried to put the idea forward that Nate Erskine-Smith was critical of Carney's budget because it spends too much money, is that the reality? Is that what you got from Nate Erskine-Smith's commentary there? It's not about the money. It's about what the focus of the budget is. So Nate Erskine-Smith is critical of the fact that it's short on climate, that public dollars are still backing fossil fuels, that there's major cuts to development assistance, and even goes as far at the end there to call it a conservative budget with a picture of former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney in the corner. And then ends on the video of D'Entremont, the Conservative MP, joining the Liberals after seeing the budget, because it is an incredibly conservative budget. The incredible, amazing dishonesty on display from Pierre Poilievre, those comments about Nate Erskine-Smith, is just amazing. Let me get to the last clip here. This is how Pierre Poilievre tries to deflect a question with, again, incredibly dishonest framing.
Aaron Collins, CBC. So Chris D'Entremont, just turning back to last week's comments, said that your party is being run like a frat house. So I'm just curious what you think he means by that, and if you think
Well, I think that CBC had to be. Are you with CBC, by the way?
Yeah, that's what.
Oh, okay, right.
So I'm just curious if you think that that could lead to more MPs leaving your caucus, and what you think he means by that.
Well, first of all, CBC has had to correct the falsehoods that they put into that story. So I encourage you to tell Canadians about the falsehoods you published and explain why you did that.
All right, so to try and undermine the actual report about the Conservative Party feeling like a frat house, Pierre Poilievre claims that the CBC had to correct the falsehoods that they put into the story, making it sound like CBC did improper journalism, put some narrative in the story that made it sound worse than it actually was, and then they got caught and had to correct it. Here is the reality. First, of course, worth mentioning, Pierre Poilievre never actually answered the question about the party feeling like a frat house. Never gets to that. Doesn't want to actually answer that. But this is what the CBC initially reported, and I'm going to get to the correction. So d'Entremont, the Conservative MP who left to join the Liberals, says Conservative House Leader Andrew Scheer and Party Whip Chris Walkerton barged into his office, pushed his assistant aside, and yelled at him about how much of a snake he was. What part of this do you think had to be corrected? It's the pushed his assistant aside. So d'Entremont wanted to be clear that the assistant was not physically pushed, but was instead almost knocked over. This is immaterial to the entire report, which is about how the party to d'Entremont felt, how it felt like a frat house and not a serious political party. That's the story here. Not that, oh, they weren't physically pushed, which again wasn't what pushed aside, assistant aside. Reading this initially, I didn't get the impression they were physically pushed aside, that they were just, pushed, like brushed aside so I can get to speaking to d'Entremont. That's how it came off to me. And I guess some took it as the assistant was actually physically pushed, so he wanted to clear that up. Again, this is not important. But Pierre Poilievre, to avoid actually answering the question about how his party feels, how members of his party feel, he focuses on this very tiny little minute thing that isn't even important to the actual story to try and make it seem like the entire story that CBC reported is dishonest, when it simply is not. It's important just to be aware of how Pierre Poilievre construes reality to make things seem a certain way when they are not that way. Now, of course, he's not the only politician that does that. Very clearly, politicians of all parties do this kind of thing. But Pierre Poilievre does it so consistently that it is, if you just stop and watch and jump into what he says throughout any of these sorts of media appearances, it is incredible what you will find. If you enjoyed this video, please hit like and subscribe and check out some of the other videos I have on this channel.